Thanks for sending out the reminder, Lynn.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh,
All right.
same. Hi, Billy.
All right. Here we go. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Resource Advisor Cohort for May 2022. We've got some nice guests for us. They're going to speak for us today. And first, just a reminder that there is a new, at least one new resource advisor training that's on the spreadsheet in the Google Drive. So take a look at that if you're looking for a resource advisor training. If you're there's also in the Google Drive, there is the fires looking for people. And we have changed some of the ways we do that from the ways we have done it in the past. If you're on a fire and that fire needs resource advisors and you want to get that word out through the cohort, this year we're asking that you send us, like, take a photograph or scan it or something, but send us a copy of the resource order. That way we will have all the contacts correct. I mean, this is the general message form that you've put in to ordering. That's what we would like to see. So we have all the contacts correct. We know that you've coordinated with the fire and the local agency, the local unit, and that you need those positions, and those positions are already working in the system in IROC to get them filled. We had a lot of problems last year, a lot of really good intent for people getting the word out about fires, but it wasn't coordinated well with the local unit, and we got bad phone numbers, bad contacts. The unit didn't need more reads, or needed a different type than we had been helping with. So we sort of inundated people who didn't need to be inundated. In fact, we inundated somebody who didn't even know what a resource advisor was. They were a member of the public. And I remember texting some people at about 5 a.m. and waking the public up, general public up. So we're trying to curb that, also get, have it more equal. So it's not just people in the, that are on social media or in the paying attention to the cohort, and that we're using the ordering system. So just the FYI. And also, if you want to get ordered, get yourself available in IROC with your dispatch. I think those are the two big announcements. I don't know, Melissa, did you have anything?
Not at the time. I was going to put the Google Drive link in the chat box, but morning, everyone. And I'm excited to be here with all of you.
Well, shorthand, it's tinyurl.com/new read cohort. All right, so we're going to let our two speakers, Allison Young and Justin Speak, introduce themselves, and then let them do their presentations.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Young. I'm the Section 106 coordinator for the National Capital Regional Office of the National Park Service. Well, Jordan, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Jordan SPAAK. I'm an ecologist with the NPS. I sit in the National Office of the Natural Resource Stewardship and Science Directorate, stationed in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation on the screen. I think hopefully you guys can see that now. And I'm going to turn my camera off so that I can preserve bandwidth, and we'll get going. We do have time set aside for questions during this time. So if you have them, either type them into the chat or save them for that period, please. Okay. Okay. So I wanted to give just a little context to my background in federal archaeology and fire. I received fire training for the first time when I was an architect on the Colville National Forest way back in 2010. And I started working for the NPS at the Midwest Archaeological Center during graduate school right after that. I then took my first permanent job at Ozark National Scenic Riverways and helped a lot with fire there. We did a ton of prescribed burning, also did a little bit of responding to wildfires when they were in the park as needed. And I started going out on Western fire assignments at that time. A little context on this presentation, it grew out of a READ course that I was asked to help with at the Tennessee-Kentucky Wildland Fire Academy. And it's going to essentially just follow a READ during the during a typical operational period. It is a little bit geared towards people who don't have as much experience going out west. So apologies if you don't find this as relevant. So at 0540, you wake up in your tent, get ready for the day, and put on your boots. I also, quick note, I've incorporated a ton of personal photos into this presentation. Some of you might see yourselves in some of them, but just a heads up for that.
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to spread out so much. Please sit down.
Hey, Pete, you're not on mute. At 0600, report to briefing. Make sure you have a pen and pencil with you. Grab a copy of the IAP and start updating maps on your tablet or phone off the QR code on the document. Make sure you're actively listening to the briefing, especially fire weather and fire behavior, and take notes on your IAP as needed. Attend the division breakout for the division you are assigned to. On this fire, you have been assigned to Division Zulu. You'll be working there again today. So you listen to the plan for the day, and then you tie in with Division directly at the end of it and let him know your tentative work plan. You ask him if he has any specific resource questions or concerns. He tells you he's proposing a dozer line on a ridge top. You check your ARC map and see there are several sites in the vicinity. You let him know your first priority for the day will be flagging off those sites for avoidance. He then connects you with the task force leader and heavy equipment boss who will be doing that work. And he also lets you know what drop point he will be staging at in the morning. You learn during briefing that there's a new radio clone, so you have to stop by comms to get the clone done. You grab breakfast and head back to the READ tent. The lead READ has a brief huddle to discuss the plan for the day and assignments. They notify you that the Heritage Program Manager for the local forest has told them about a historic guard station that could be threatened by the fire within the next few days within your division. The agency administrator would really like to see it wrapped because it had just recently been redone, and they're hoping to be able to eventually lease it out as part of their rec program. The lead READ fills out a general message for you with a request for the wrap, staple guns, and tape. You eat your breakfast and make a game plan for the day. Your first priority is to flag off ARC sites on the proposed dozer line. Your partner is an ecologist who also needs to check on a riparian area that has a T&E species and may have had retardant dropped in it not too far from that proposed line. You come up with a plan to stage your vehicle at the bottom of the proposed line, and your partner drops you off at the top and then goes to check the riparian area. It's a slide for the general message for ordering structure wrap. Before leaving camp, you need to download the site files for the proposed line, drop your laundry off, submit your completed CTRs to finance, get fuel, and grab lunches and water. You make a plan to take care of these tasks and meet up with your partner by the lunches. You then head to the field. For field work, Always make sure you have your PPE, your boots on, helmet, gloves, earplugs, and eye protection, radio, a spare set of batteries or a clamshell, your tablet or phone with a Venza and collector on it, an IRPG, an IAP, a notebook, and a writing utensil. And your tool. You and your partner head to the field. You stop by at the drop point division will be at to discuss the historic guard station that needs to be wrapped. You let him know supplies are being ordered. He lets you know that he can probably have a hand crew available in the next day or two to assist with the wrapping. You thank him and head off to the proposed dozer line. You tie in with task force leader and the heavy equipment boss who will be putting in the line. You let them know your plan to walk it and flag off the sensitive areas. You do a quick check to make sure you can reach your partner and the task force leader on your radio. You start walking. Your partner heads off to check on the riparian area. You use the site files and the ARC site layers on your tablet to relocate the sites and get them flagged off. You also check high probability areas for sites in areas that haven't been surveyed. The survey takes a couple hours. You tie back in with the task force leader constructing contingency lines and notify him that the areas have been flagged off and communicate those flagging colors. You make sure some quick field notes about the completed survey and the sites you flagged off. As you work, you've been using your tablet to track the proposed line and take points of key avoidance areas. So at 1200 hours, you make sure you make your way to your vehicle at the bottom of the line and check in with your partner. They are wrapping up their documentation of the retardant misapplication. You make a plan to meet up for lunch at a nearby drop point, and you take a minute to catch up on your field notes and on your tablet. Here's a slide for the retardant misapplication. So you take your lunch break. With morning tasks completed, you look at your collector maps and see there is a completed dozer line in the area that needs to be walked for ARC clearance, as well as being assessed for suppression repair needs. There's also some spotted owl habitat along the dozer line that is of concern to your partner. So you make a plan to set up a shuttle and walk it together. You finish up your survey of the completed line at about 1530. One previously unrecorded ARC site was disturbed. You flag the area off for avoidance during suppression repair and do a quick damage assessment. You take notes, GPS points, and photos. Your partner writes repair prescriptions into collector. As your last activity of the day, you and your partner visit the guard station to prepare for the task of coordinating its wrapping. You take rough measurements of the buildings and take photos of the area. You notice the dispensable space could be improved around the area as well. You write up some notes. So it's 1730. You make sure you check out with division on the radio. You then book it back to camp because the lead read would like you in camp by 1830. You arrive back at camp, grab dinner, and head back to the read tent. At 1900, you have a read meeting. Round robin style, everyone discusses their day and provides updates to a paper map. You sync collector on your tablet, but it takes a few tries because the Wi-Fi is so spotty. You get a start on your daily log. You make detailed notes about the ARC sites you visited and update your photo log. You fill out your CTR and get your lead read to sign it. At 2000, all reads and reefs attend a planning meeting. Reads and FOBs report out on observations from the day. Planning discusses objectives for tomorrow. The fire is primarily still focused on suppression, but a suppression repair division is being formulated. The lead read has completed a draft of the suppression repair plan, and it is currently being reviewed by the forest and the IMT. Your lead read asks you to review the sections that discuss archaeology. You continue to update your daily log and field notes. You also tie in with the other ARCs on the incident about which dozer lines have been surveyed for ARC clearance, and you also discuss some common cultural resource concerns you're seeing across the incident. You pull some site forms you may need for tomorrow and grab your laundry. Just a quick note about CTRs. Always be nice to finance staff. They can make your life heaven or hell. Make sure you're documenting your HPay in the remarks, including which division you were assigned to on the IIP, and stay on top of submitting your time. Keep copies of your CTRs and carefully check the final summary when you demo. Before bed, take a moment, check in with your loved ones at home, maybe read a book for a little bit. And then at 2200 hours, you'll head to bed. Some key takeaways I wanted to highlight. So I kind of constructed this as a case study of a day from multiple fire assignments. Take care of yourself. Leave time for meals, breaks, drinking water, and sleep. Stay on top of things like laundry and keeping your rig organized, taking the occasional shower. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and your mental and physical wellness are crucial. It's from my personal experience, it's easy to kind of get caught up in the day-to-day sort of frantic demands and let those other things slide. But overall, my quality of work is a lot better if I'm scheduling that stuff and really making it a priority. Secondly, be kind, be courteous, be professional. Relationship building, communication, and soft skills are essential to functioning effectively. Sometimes it's helpful to not necessarily lead with the ologist part of your brain when you're communicating. Think about the broader needs of the incident and use your resource knowledge to help advocate in that moment. Be mindful of communication and the flow of information. Make sure information flows up to leadership and then back down to the field. You'll be getting information and requests from your lead read, the AO and planning more in the evenings, and from operations and your division in the morning. Try to prioritize staying ahead of operations needs as much as possible. Keep your lead read informed and up to date on your activities and needs. Be flexible and be ready to triage. New priorities and problems keep coming up. On any given day, you'll have lots of balls in the air. Sometimes a ball will get dropped. There's a little like story or kind of like online meme thing I read about everyone has a lot of balls in the air. Some of them are plastic and some of them are glass. So it's okay if a ball gets dropped, but you want to try to make sure it's a plastic one, not a glass one. And the more experience you gain with fire, you'll get a better sense of what those priorities are. I made a point here about data hygiene, and I tried to emphasize this in the presentation. Collect good data, take good notes, stay on top of the paperwork. Really think about the package you are leaving for the home unit. Keep a detailed record of who you speak to and when. And for archaeologists, you'll probably have your own set of standards and working within the confines of the Archaeological Resource Protection Act. So just a good thing to keep in mind. Lastly, for safety, advocate for yourself. Work with a partner whenever possible. Make time for radio checks and always keep LCES in your mind. Take care of yourself and have fun. Got a group of reads here on the Orleans complex from a few years ago, and that's my dog Hank, who you may be able to hear barking in the background right now. But that's when I reunited with him after a fire assignment, which is always the best feeling in the world. I will pass it off to Jordan now.
Right, bringing this up. Let me know when you guys can see my screen here. Is that in presenter view?
Yes.
Okay. Just work with that. All right, so I am fairly new to the fire world. I've only had a red card for 3 years now and did a good bit of prescribed fire work, but had never been on a REAF assignment or a type 1 incident. So this quick presentation here is my experiences and thoughts and takeaways. And my hope with this is somebody that might feel overwhelmed or a little hesitant to get on an incident might find some useful information and put them at ease and get them out on an incident, because I had an absolute blast while I was on the Dixie and in a REAF role. So just a quick little roadmap, what I wish I knew, what information helped the most, collaboration and soft skills, natural and cultural resource management. And a lot of this will probably dovetail in real nice with what Allison previously presented on. So I'll jump in. What I wish I knew, financial code. So I'm in the Park Service, and the Forest Service uses P codes. So I did not get those converted over, the Forest Service P codes, that is, converted over to an NPS WBS code before I left. I wished I would have. So I was on incident during a blackout period at the end of the fiscal year and then into the new fiscal year. So accounting got real messy to go back and get done. The second piece, QuickTime codes in accounting. So whatever your payroll system might be, I would highly encourage you, if you have an inexperienced admin person, let them know some of the codes they can expect to see on your time cards from fire, the long hours that are on there. Our individual is fantastic, but she had never seen a time card from fire, and I submitted mine to her. She thought it was an error, and actually just put my normal hours in. She tried to call me multiple times, but of course I was on incident and not a cell range, and it took me many months to get paid. CTR, so Allison touched on these a little bit as well, but Wiley helped me figure out how to fill out a CTR, but these are quite important, and Allison talked about what to do with these on incident. But I used this, and I also created a daily log for myself of how many hours worked, what was done, who I talked to. So I used my carbon copy CTRs and my daily logs to retroactively go back and get QuickTime figured out. So I finally did get paid 3 or 4 months later, but just give your accounting person, a timekeeper, a heads up if they're not experienced with fire, and let them know what's coming. Might save you and them a bunch of headaches. And be sure the incident approves a 4x4 truck for you. I had that approved on my orders, but all that was left at Enterprise when I got there was this SUV crossover all-wheel drive deal. And day one on the incident, I was like, I'm going to lose an oil pan and have 4 flat tires if we keep up with this thing. So strongly encourage you to get a truck if you can and if it's on your orders. And less is more gear-wise. So in my day job, I may start my week in Alaska and end it in Florida. And I have a tendency to bring a lot of gear to keep myself comfortable through all those range. I brought that same mentality on fire assignment with me, and I just brought way too much gear. It's heavy, it's expensive, you don't need it. Allison put up a nice gear slide, PPEs, sleeping bag, a sweatshirt. I did not bring enough socks. That's the biggest one. I went and bought a whole bunch more pairs of socks for this year. That was the big one that I regretted. And the next point, you'll be drinking from a fire hose. So when I took the 9042 course, I thought, wow, this is a lot of information, a little overwhelming. But when you get on incident, the diameter of the fire hose you're drinking from will increase. And I would say don't be overwhelmed by that. Just ask a lot of questions. Put your pride in your back pocket and learn as much as you possibly can from all the people that are around you. The REAF cohort on the Dixie was fantastic at answering my questions and teaching me the why. So really enjoyed that. And another observation I had is don't let people's egos get under your skin. I had a long day of travel, and when I arrived at the fairgrounds, there was a law enforcement officer there at the gate that was bound and determined to not let me in. So I got me out of my car, questioned me, asked for my resource orders. We finally got it figured out, and it was bothering me, but I didn't let that be displayed. I said, this individual could be here for a while, he could be tired, but yeah, that was a big ego, and we can get past that. So the next point I'll bring up is you might screw up, and that's okay. As long as nobody got hurt, try to learn from it. So this was my big screw up on the Dixie. Just to orient yourself here, I'm standing on a dozer line. You can see on the left here, the fire burned up the hill to the dozer line. And then to the right of this picture is about a 50 to 75 yard swath of dozer line. And this was a sensitive arc site that I was up with the archaeologist and Tom DeMau. I mean, we were just documenting the suppression damages on it. And when we were done doing our work, I went to go ahead and get this dozer line into collector. And I thought I clicked on the drop down menu of track this as dozer line. Turns out I didn't, but I didn't know that for a while. So I left this point, went to another division later in the afternoon, got back to camp late, uploaded as quick as I could, dinner, evening read meeting. About an hour later, the ops chief and the GISS came into the read tent pretty dang hot because there was an individual that turned the entire fire perimeter on the east zone of the Dixie into dozer line, and that was not accurate. And that individual was me, and I ruined $3,000 worth of maps for the next operational period. So I thought I had clicked on track the dozer line, but I actually clicked on the fire perimeter that was just right next to me. Hot, sunny day, dirty, dusty, fat finger mistake. So learn from it. Thankfully, Heidi Ogle is fantastic and bailed me out on that and smoothed things over. What information helped me the most? So most of this came from Wiley Paxton on the call we had before I arrived on the Dixie. And what do you do when you get there? You check in, find the lead read 10 after that, and check in with the lead read or another read that you can find. And those are some good questions to ask them, especially if you're new. And the best piece I found is just go walk around and orient yourself around camp. It was big. Figure out where everything's at so you're comfortable and efficient. Grab a tool, any gear you did not bring with you, whatever that might be from supply. Go to the comms tent and get your radio cloned or check one out if you need to, and get your gear and your tent and everything ready for the following day. Allison highlighted how busy the mornings are. It's go, 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 and you don't want to be fussing with gear and miss a division breakout meeting or something of the sort. The next piece that helped me a bunch was to grab an IEP or an incident action plan and a map and just figure out what the division priorities were and where the divisions are, and that helps you understand the evening read meeting kind of what's going on, but it gives you some familiarity with the next operational period when you'll be out in the field. Those of you that were on the Dixie recognize this picture. Not very good, but it's all I had. So there's just a lot going on. That's what I wanted to display: tents and peoples and generators and campers, and there's just a lot happening. So don't feel overwhelmed by that. Just go walk around, figure it out. Collaboration and soft skills. I would say these were probably one of, if not the most important points to bring on a resource advisor assignment. Allison touched on this, but our job is to advise and not direct. And I'll give you an example. There's a division soup that pretty much told me absolutely not to a recommendation I had about a rare plant site on the Dixie. It was during suppression, very dynamic, very active fire situation. No big deal. I just documented that they declined that, documented who it was, and we move on to the next job. Don't take it personal. Don't stuff any ologist mentality down their throat. They're juggling a lot of pieces and parts. So the next thing I would say is, this is a question I ask myself frequently, is how to take a collaborative approach to protect resources. What I find effective is to share with a division soup, heavy equipment boss, task force, whatever it might be, kind of where I would like to get to, but ask them how to get there. You know, what can you do to help us get to this goal, or what do you think about this goal? And then they feel like they have some buy-in. You get a pulse on how collaborative they want to be to help out or not. And it just helps move the needle in the right direction. I would also say apply this within the resource advisor cohort. I found certain times folks get tired, high stress, and some of the ARC folks that felt like the ARC priorities were more of a priority, and some of the NR folks felt like natural resource side was more of a priority. But the takeaway is they're both priorities, and we need to be working to enhance and document both of those priorities. So last thing I'll say with this bullet is it's the old adage of, if you can help someone reach their goals, then you'll probably be able to reach theirs. And just a little shout out to Buzzard 1 and 2 in this picture here on the right. We were working to get this fire line closed off to ORV use. That was at the request of the forest, and working with heavy equipment boss and operator to get all these trees put back over the fire line. Next slide. So natural cultural resource management. So this was really neat for me because my first week on the Dixie was suppression mode, and the second week after a rainstorm was suppression repair. So I got to see both ends of the spectrums on my first assignment. Suppression felt like a lot of flagging, engaging with division, figuring out where their plans are. Just really dynamic. A lot is moving. And then when the pendulum swung to suppression repair, it was documenting suppression repair damage, culverts, water bars, whatever it might be, fire lines that need to be covered again. So really cool to see both scenarios, but both were different. The other piece I really enjoyed, probably one of the most, was the collaborative opportunities with archaeologists and natural resource. So I tied in with Hannah Robinson, the BLM out of Utah, for a day and just picked her brain as much as I could. And what a fantastic time I had. We visited a couple of ARC sites that were damaged, and she kind of walked me through what she was thinking. We walked some dozer lines and found some flakes and some artifacts and whatnot, and it kind of taught me how to read the landscape and prioritize. And that just helped me when I was by myself out working on a day-to-day basis. So really enjoyed that time to pick her brain as much as I could. The other bullet I'll say is you need to prioritize quickly. We're not going to save every tree or blade of grass, and we can't have that expectation. I noticed there was a few division folks, heavy equipment bosses that get really burned out on resource advisors trying to say everything is a priority. And on a fire the size of the Dixie, it's just too big. Everything is not a priority, nor can it be. So work kind of to understand what are truly the priorities with the lead read or somebody local or another read that's been there for a while. So just ask questions if you're not sure about that point. I will wrap up here with just a couple photos I had. So this was on an ARC site that was damaged by a dozer. That was the first flake I found on the right. I was pretty excited by that. And then Hannah pointed out, you guys in the ARC community know what this rock is called, so I apologize for totally butchering this. But it's what Native Americans used to actually pound and make the arrowheads and the flakes. I just thought that was pretty cool to see all this in a 10-foot stretch of a dozer line. So unfortunate it was damaged, but really cool for me to see that. And those in the hydrology ranks, they're going to cringe at this a little bit, but this is actually a wet meadow. You can see the willow leaf sticking out on the left. This started out, there was about a 6-foot dirt mound to the right of that willow leaf, and I worked with a dozer operator in a ad hoc heavy equipment boss capacity to get this smoothed out as best we could. Is that rehabbed, restored? No, but hopefully it's on a good trajectory where when water does come back, it can reach that floodplain. And that was the best we could do at that time with what we had. And that was just being able to accept that that was the best it was going to be. Another fun project we went on, we built some beaver analog dams in T&E habitat for frog. Worked with Colin Dillingham. A group of 6 of us went in to create these analog dams. I think we put 5 or 6 of them in. That was kind of a fun project. I've had some other experience with this in park units, so we enjoyed that time and kind of that side project. This was another wet meadow ingress egress scenario, and this came at the direction from the forest and from division for me to help out get this wet meadow figured out. I saw some point about the weed seeds. Oh, that was a thing in my mind, but again, the private landowners were much more happy just having it flat, and they said they'll handle it from there. They just don't want to get a bulldozer back here to smooth it out. So worked with a lot of private landowners on these ingress egress scenarios and to get these dozer lines smoothed out for them a little bit as best we could. And the next, again, Hannah pointed out this arrow carved into this rock that actually pointed to a hunting camp that we checked out prior. Thought that was pretty neat to think that we're standing in the same place that folks were tens of thousands of years prior. So really cool. Just enjoyed that time. And what I'll wrap up with, I have a big thanks to Wiley Paxton. He really took me under his wing on assignment. Cedar Drake got me on assignment through Tom DeMau. Big thanks to Tom for bringing me in on my first assignment, teaching me a ton. And Heidi just continually took me under her wing. So thanks.
Did we just lose Justin?
I think we did. Clerk. Okay, let me see if I can find him again. His computer might have done like an automatic restart after he did the updates.
Yeah. Well, you're doing that. I haven't seen many questions in the chat, but we could go for questions while we're trying to see if we can get. Ah, there he is.
I'm back.
You're
I
back,
got booted off
Jordan.
for some reason.
Did you have any more, or Jordan?
No, the last thing I was gonna say is I had just a fantastic time on assignment and really excited to get out again. And I hope folks that are on the fence about going on their first assignment just jump in and go. That's my last point to make.
Cool. Great job. Thank you very much, Allison and Jordan. There's a lot of like thanks in the in the chat. Well, we can go to questions. Anybody? I see one hand. Melissa?
All right, it took me a little bit to unclick. So there was one question, I just want to make sure we caught it. Let's see here about a dam. Was the Beaver Dam analog installed on private or public land? Curious about restoration opportunities during suppression repair, from Gabrielle Bowman.
That's pulling way too far on my memory to remember if it was public or private. It was part of the rehab plan through Fish and Wildlife. So I couldn't tell you though if it was public or private. I just do not remember.
I see one question earlier in the chat. You survey a dozer line after it's been created, not while it's in progress. Must be a large scale fire. So someone below responded that a lot of it is the kind of famous archaeologist section 106 answer of it depends. In a perfect world, you get to walk a line before it's put in and then after it's put in. It all just kind of varies. I will say it's with the shortages we've had of line qualified ARCs in recent years, that's kind of a perfect world scenario that we try to meet.
Yeah, it's very, it's not very often that we get to do survey in front of all the dozer lines. And some background for people who don't know where the Dixie was the almost 1 million acre fire that happened on the Plumas and Lassen last year in California, in northeastern California. And that's one good example. There were like over 200 pieces of heavy equipment at one point pushing dozer line. So there was no way you're going to get enough reeds and arcs in front of all those. Go ahead. If anybody has a question or a comment, just speak up, raise your hand, put it in the chat.
So I just wanted to share that I really appreciated, Jordan, how you shared how you felt throughout your entire time out there. I mean, I can only imagine how unexpected it is to have a law enforcement officer questioning you out there and going through that steps in those process. So many times I think there's something uncomfortable that happens, but it doesn't get talked about. So I just really appreciate you sharing that piece, during your talk.
Sure, happy to. It's comical now. At the time, everybody's tired and a little worn out, so it's not so comical, but it's one of those. It's just got to put our pride aside and get through it.
I did see a question here. For the reeds that aren't, that without fire line qualifications, would your day be different? Would you still be able to send a REAF building further from the fire line, for instance? Either of you want to take that or I can take it.
Go for it, Lynn.
Yeah, I'll pass to you.
So if you don't have fire alarm qualifications, most of your day is just going to be spent in ICP, helping with the lead read and doing a lot of paperwork, maybe helping organize and get information to the people out on the line. If there's a desperate need, you might be able to go out with line qualified people and be escorted out to help with something like wrapping a building or something. But I would expect that you're not going to go on the line very much. And you're always, if you're going to go, you're going to be escorted. I will also make the comment that, and I'm really pushing this, especially since I became a member of a type 1 team. So especially on a big incident, the teams should be the ones wrapping it, and we're still advising. We shouldn't have like a strike team of resource advisors going and wrapping a building without operations there and without somebody from the team having blessed that and make sure that it's happening the way the team wants. That's safety wise. That's so the team knows that site's there and needs to be protected, and the divisions and everybody else. So just want to add that. You guys can elaborate more if I didn't.
Jordan, I see a question about dozer line in meadows and what it accomplishes, if anything.
I mean, there's so many dozer lines on the Dixie, but at that point in time, they were cutting dozer line anywhere and everywhere and just going direct on the flame front, and it kept spotting out ahead of it. And so they just go cut more dozer line wherever, however. And it was just so dry at that time. I don't think anybody realized that was actually a dozer operator, that those were truly wet meadows. And to Lynn's point, there was so many dozers operating. There's no way there could be a resource advisor to say, don't do that. So.
And I'll add, I would not to denigrate anybody's knowledge or experience, but some of the things that happened on the Dixie were just dozer operators running amok and just like, I'm going to put my blade down and I'm going to do something. There's really no reason, even in a dry meadow, probably to be putting a dozer line. And in the Dixie, I know of at least 2 incidents where dozers got stuck in wet meadows. It was just we got to get out. We're doing something. We're going to stop this fire, and without a lot of thought. I will say, Cal Fire dozers in California do not have a dozer boss. The dozer boss is the operator, which means when somebody wrote there were 36 pieces of equipment on one division during Dixie, they're doing stuff just on their own initiative, thinking they're doing a good thing and trying to do the best they can, but they're not thinking about the resources. There are great operators. I'm not denigrating everybody.
I see a question. Does anyone have experience as an AD read or experience ordering an AD read? If so, are there any tips or guidance to share? I don't have personal experience being an AD, but I've worked with a lot of AD reads and they're great.
The ordering of an AD is the exact same as an agency person. It all goes through IROC and the ordering system on fire. There's nothing different about that. Becoming an AD can be a chore in itself. You got to find a local unit that will sponsor you and get in with them and get sponsored. And if there's somebody in our group who is AD and wants to address that, how to get that, speak up.
Is Molly Ray on? Throw her under the bus.
or Jason is. Benford Russell or Russell Benford, you say you've served as an AD. Do you want to speak up?
I sure can. I'm not exactly sure what the question is, and I'm happy to talk offline at length. But I've served and still do as a AD Read and REAF. And like you suggested, Lynn, I just attached to a local agency. Luckily, I'm good friends with the FMO at that agency, so he let me pack test with his crew, and made me, I guess, a temporary member. He runs an AD crew, so it wasn't too out of line for them administratively. And then I could get called up, and I rolled with him several times.
And just Ed, you can get AD with like some of the municipal fire departments. The city fire departments have agreements, so you can get your AD sponsorship through some of them if you can't get a federal agency, like a Forest Service or BLM or somebody.
I see one. Is there a need for post-fire cleanup reads, thinking about erosion and sediment control in sensitive geologies and highly erosive soils? So there's kind of a two-pronged answer to that, Maggie. We mentioned suppression repair. That's kind of the read role in what you're speaking to, and it's when you're looking at dozer line and how it's going to be repaired, including like water bars and essentially providing prescriptions through a suppression repair plan to minimize those types of damage. And then after the IMT is left, or sometimes while they're still on, a burned area emergency response team will be activated, and they'll be looking at the impacts of the fire more holistically, both to natural and cultural resources.
So, Alberto, you put a quick thing. So you need to be red carded question. Not sure what you mean by that. Because if that goes back to the like non-fireline qualified resource advisor, yes, everybody needs to be red carded whether you're in camp or not in camp. Red card is really how you get in the system to get ordered to a fire.
I see one. Do the dozer operators have GPS units so we can preload them with priority avoidance areas? So CAL FIRE dozers do have GPS units. I have never seen an instance of them being preloaded with avoidance areas like that. But we do, ideally there will be a read in the field communicating those avoidance areas and advocating for them. Jordan or Lynn, do you want to add to that answer?
Saw one instance, and again, I have a very narrow scope here, but there was one instance where a dozer operator was using preloaded points and went about 2 feet into a spring instead of plowing through the full 50-yard spring. So that was good. You could see where they stopped, backed up, and then scooted around it. So that saw one out of I don't know how many dozens of bulldozers operating.
Yeah, that's it. Definitely know some agency dozers who have worked a lot with resource advisors or ARCs who for their local unit will have stuff. And there's a lot of trust in that, in giving that data to the dozer operators. With archaeology stuff, there's a lot of there's confidentiality issues. There's the same with T&E species. And so it's usually not given out to all the operators. It does depend, and we're going to really work with that person and know that we're going to trust them and that they're going to delete it afterwards and things like that. So it's not given whole hog to everybody. I would say that most people are carrying a GPS these days because you have it in your pocket. And you can do that, so you can work with people with it. But them attached to the dozer, if they do have it attached to their dozer, it's their private one and it's not part of the contract. So it's not going to fire data.
I have seen two more in recent years, some kind of bigger picture, just avoidance areas that are put on the larger incident map. Nobody says what it is, but it's just a way to communicate broadly to please stay out of this area with heavy equipment.
Yeah. Tend to be very highly sensitive resources. There was a wolf exclusion area on the Dixie. There's the sacred site exclusion areas, hazmat, all that. So those can be added. I've even added packs, like marble marlette packs to operation maps to keep people out of areas. One, you don't want to put every resource as that on a map. It just will drive operations crazy and gives them no leeway.
On fires with a mix of public and private lands, how does this impact REAF work? So generally speaking, READs don't do much on private lands. We're kind of working for the interests of the agency, specifically the agency administrator. There are rare occasions on a fire. Last season, a tribe had a concern on private land, and they communicated that up through the forest tribal liaison, and we had to kind of go through official channels with the team. Usually, or not, CAL FIRE does have some archaeologists that they use in those situations, but in this specific instance, they didn't have someone available to come help with this interest, so I ended up doing it. But you have to be very clearly above board with the incident management team and what you're doing and why you're on private land.
And I just said this, one person who says don't agree with never repairing on private land. So the whole private land issue, suppression actions taken on private land is dealt with usually through some state agency or some oversight, in that whenever you are on multi-jurisdictional fires, you actually are usually in a unified command. So there is an IC for the private landowners. You may only see the one IC from the incident management team that's up there speaking, but he's in unified command, he or she. They are in unified command with other people telling them what can happen on the different land ownership. And that includes repair. And so, like in Oregon, the Department of Forestry, the Oregon Department of ODF, oversees what's happening on private land. CAL FIRE does it in California, every state has something, or there's in part of Oregon, you might have a private timber group or an association that does that, and they come up with the repair standards for those private lands in conjunction with what the private landowner wants. So if the private landowner says, I don't want any repair, then no repair happens. If the private landowner says, I want a resource advisor, they can ask for that through your agency as a mutual request, a mutual aid request, usually a mutual aid request under the Wyatt Act or something else. And the Wyatt Act is what's sort of allowing the cross-jurisdictional fire suppression. And there's other acts that do it too. But really, when you're a resource advisor, you work for the agency administrator, you work for the agency. So the agency administrator is the one who's going to have to make that decision on whether the resource advisors are going to help on the private lands or not. It's not really your decision as a READ to make that, to go do that. You work for it's just same as in your day job. I'm not going to go walking over on private land to do some ARC survey. I'm going to work on Forest Service land. Unless I've worked in conjunction with that private landowner and my agency. So just keep that in mind. Usually those repair specifications are going to be different than what's happening on the Forest Service, because they have every right to have differences. And CAL FIRE will, in California, has a specification across the state and it's a minimal repair, but that's all they do. And it's not a repair to lines gone. It's just a repair to reduce erosion. It's minimal. That's all they'll do. They won't do more. It's the landowner, which includes the federal landowner's decision to come back after CAL FIRE does it to improve it to their specs within the CAL FIRE DPA, the direct protection area. So every state's going to be a little different on that, but really you're going to have to work with your agency administrator through your lead read to figure out what you're doing with private land versus public lands. I know that was a detailed answer, but just wanted to get that out there.
I see a question. How do you identify yourself as a REAF trainee? There's not an official so a task book is in the works for reads, as I understand it. So it's a bit more of an informal system right now. You want to ideally attach yourself to someone who is an experienced read and can take you and let you just kind of shadow on the assignment. If that's not feasible, just make sure when you get there, you are extremely upfront with your lead read that you do not have experience. Don't be shy, just, yeah, be extremely clear about that. My first read assignment was the rough fire, and Lynn was my lead read, and I'm sure I looked like a deer in headlights about 99% of the time, but she was great about making sure I had a partner and was getting the training and orientation I needed. So advocate for yourself if you feel uncomfortable and don't know.
Just got a couple more minutes. There's a question about that generic labeling for those exclusion areas. I don't usually, we'll work with situation unit, who is the makers of the map, as to what they're called and what they are, how they're labeled and how they're colored on the maps. And Heidi probably could answer this better than I can, but it's really just, I try to make it very generic. No suppression area, something that just says operations stay out of here. I don't try to call out why it's there, and try to, if there's something else, use it to. Heidi, do you wanna? I'm butchering this answer.
Gotcha, Lynn. What we did on the Dixie, we had 4 different exclusion or avoidance areas. We had dozer exclusion, retardant exclusion, or retardant avoidance, depression exclusion, and drafting avoidance. And what those basically lined out to was, we knew in certain creeks that there was a mineral or something in the water that was could be toxic to firefighters when they sprayed that water. So we tried to have tenders not draft out of those creeks. We had dozer avoidance, but we didn't put every ARCSAT on there. Those were the only things that we put on there were super significant areas that were of major concern, listed properties, that type of thing. Aerial retardant avoidance, or retardant avoidance in general, those were on there, which pretty much correspond to wetlands and center lines from creeks and navigable rivers. And then the other one was just suppression exclusion, which was a general, just all hands stay out areas. Those were oftentimes things like mines, pot grows, that kind of thing, where the area was just super toxic to firefighters. Sometimes they were also related to ethnographic sites as well. So those are the 4 that we used on the Dixie, and we have a work group that's working on that, trying to kind of develop this in coordination with WFDIS, the next gen WFDIS, to try to get a better handle on suppression tactics as it relates to resource damage and resource issues. Hope that helps.
And I'll just point out, so our Denise from CAL FIRE, correct me on the CAL FIRE does work with some landowners to do a higher level repair based on what the owners work in the, or what the landowners want. And she put a example in there, especially on the ARC sites. And the CAL FIRE does have archaeologists. They don't have general resource advisors, but there are like 8 archaeologists. So I know that my negotiations with CAL FIRE during the Dixie fire was, this is the standard they use, and they weren't going to go above it, even on public lands. But they will work with the landowner. All right, I think we are 1 minute over. I want everybody to give a round of applause to Jordan and Allison. That was great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you have questions.
Same for me. Thanks for your time.
And we'll post the recording on the Google Drive. And Allison and Jordan, if you don't mind giving me your PowerPoints, we'll post those too. And thanks, everybody. Everybody be safe out there.
Thank you. Bye.